What's going on, guys? The Pawn Shop Hero is back again. Unlike the previous couple of characters that we talked about here on the channel, the creature we're talking about today is pretty far from underrated or ignored. One of the most known and iconic personages, Ripper Roo is a favorite amongst many fans of the Crash Bandicoot series. Despite making several appearances in major titles and being a generally popular villain, however, not everything about him is oh so clear, and there are still many questions left unanswered. In today's video, I'd like to bring together several facts about Ripper Roo, while also try to contemplate on who he is, why he does what he does, and also discuss some other riveting observations. So sit tight, guys, and follow along. Making his debut appearance in the very first Crash Bandicoot installment back in 1996, Ripper Roo has been regarded as one of the most memorable members of the character roster ever since. Like in the case with many other animal characters in the franchise, Ripper Roo was mutated by Dr. Neo Cortex as part of the army of beasts that was to be led by Crash with the goal of taking over the world. When Crash escaped Cortex's lab, Ripper Roo, Koala Kong, and Pinstripe Potoroo were the test subjects chosen to capture Crash and bring him back to the lab. Regardless of the fact that they failed to do that, they have nonetheless been established as the OG baddies of the series. So, who is Ripper Roo? Why the heck is he blue? Why does he laugh so maniacally? And what's up with the straitjacket? Knowing Naughty Dog's fetish for all things Australia, the first name Ripper is most likely an Australian slang term meaning really good or excellent. Funny enough, when researching that fact, I found a website with both words conveniently placed together. As for his surname Roo, the aforementioned Australian slang and the cages in Cortex's lab point to the fact that he is a mutated kangaroo. And although he might not immediately seem like one above the waist, his elongated paws, his tail, and the incessant jumping are pretty clear indicators that he is indeed a boomer. Due to the cartoony nature and fictional settings of the Crash series, however, the artist avoided rendering Ripper Roo as a straight-up replica of a real-life kangaroo, such as Roger from Tekken.
Well, at least until later in the series.
And instead gave him floppy ears, sharp teeth, and a tongue always hanging out of his mouth. This is where another adolescent misunderstanding comes in, which many young players, including myself, had up until a certain point in life. A lot of people thought that Ripper Roo is a dog. And to many English-speaking gamers around the globe, this may sound absolutely absurd, but to folks like myself and many others who grew up in foreign countries and spoke no English, Ripper Roo very much did seem like a mutated dog. The growls and barking sounds in CTR further asserted this misconception. Some people also considered his crazy laugh to be a sign that he could possibly be a hyena. But of course it is now ridiculous to argue, as we all know that he's a kangaroo. When scouting around the interwebs, I saw mentions of real-life kangaroos making grunting and growling sounds. So, with that said, we can definitely conclude the debate on Ripper Roo's species. Now, what I was always truly puzzled about is the color of Ripper Roo's fur. Why in the world is it blue? Is there a certain meaning behind that? I addressed the internet with my question, so let's see what they say out there. Nope, I doubt that is it. We do know that Ripper Roo, like many other animals, was exposed to the Cortex Vortex in order to become the next member of Cortex's brainwashed army. I think that the blue skin is a negative side effect of the procedure that already made him crazy. That is why he's forced to wear a straitjacket, to restrain him from getting out of control. Or maybe, just maybe, before the events of the first game, Cortex, or maybe even Nitro's Brio, the possible creator of Ripper Roo, performed a genetic experiment that altered Ripper Roo's pigmentation. These are some hypotheses I'd like to get official comments on, just to have a peace of mind, because the only additional pieces of information that we received about Ripper Roo came from the epilogues found in Crash 1 and Crash Team Racing, and to be honest with you, neither of them really made sense or have shown to be useful. The epilogue for Crash 1 states that Roo underwent intense therapy to improve his maniacal behavior, which in turn enabled him to get a doctorate degree after 8 years of studying. Now, hold up a second. In Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back, we encounter Ripper Roo near what's presumably the same old waterfall, and his new Albert Einstein-like appearance does reflect his new occupation. But how on earth did 8 years magically condense into one? The intro to Crash 2 clearly states 1 year later, so there's certainly a discrepancy that Naughty Dog forgot to correct. And the CTR credits talk about Ripper Roo going into politics, and I'd rather not talk about politics. Ripper Roo was briefly featured in Crash Bash in one of the Pogo stages titled El Pogo Loco, which is quite possibly a play on the name El Pollo Loco, a popular Californian restaurant. In the stage, he hops around on a cane and marks the tiles with TNT or nitro explosives, similar to Crash 2. So, Ripper Roo featured in Crash 1, 2, Team Racing, and Bash. Why not 3 though? The answer to that question is most likely not that complicated. Naughty Dog needed a slot for Dingodile or Entropy, the newcomers to the series, while it would have been Ripper Roo's 3rd consecutive appearance, making him the most regularly featured villain besides Neo Cortex. So I guess the devs decided to give him a break and just introduce some new faces instead. The new question is then, what could Ripper Roo be possibly doing between the events of Crash 2 and CTR? Well, he was overseeing the construction of his underwater facility, what else? I know that this is my typical unsubstantiated piece of speculation, but honestly guys, the track Roo's tubes in Crash Team Racing must mean something. His portrait is hung around the level, so why can't he possibly be some sort of entrepreneur, just like Coco, who founded an online dating site, and Tiny, who opened up a gym chain? Roo has a doctorate after all, so he's gotta be smart enough for something like that. The talk of the underwater facility just reminded me of another question that's always bothered me. What is Ripper Roo's connection with water? He's always hanging around the waterfalls in Crash 1 and 2, and then goes ahead and opens up a subaqueous base in CTR. Real-life kangaroos can go months without drinking, so his attachment to water is quite puzzling to me. Everything can of course be explained by, he was zapped with the Evolvo Ray, so these are all his side effects. But I personally like to think about other possibilities as well. I'm actually very excited for the upcoming release of The Crash Bandicoot Files by Dark Horse Comics, which can possibly shed some light on many of these details and provide answers to many or at least some of our questions. Like for example, can Ripper Roo and
Gorilla Monkey Anus Face
possibly be brothers on some level? I really hope to one day find out. And to bring this video to a close, I wanted to touch upon Ripper Roo's future within the universe. After his memorable PS1 era appearances, in spite of being given the role of a playable character in several mobile spin-off racing games, Roo was confined to only one main series cameo appearance, and that was Twinsanity in 2004. While I could not find any detailed information, some online references claim that the source code for Radical Entertainment's Crash of the Titans and Crash Mine of a Mutant indicate that Ripper Roo was meant to be in the games, but as we know was eventually cut.
Well, if this is how he's gonna look like, then I'm glad he was cut.
Maybe he was going to live around them waterfalls again, who knows. But the fact of the matter is, as of 2017, he never came back to reprise his role of an iconic boss.
It's a trilogy, doesn't really count. It's a reskin, not a new installment.
While the series staples like Crash and Cortex most certainly will always be present, it would be very satisfying to see the return of many old characters that were left in the shadows, Papu Papu and Pinstripe being another example. I think that Ripper Roo became an integral part of the series just from his role in the first two games alone, so fingers crossed that we will get to play as him and many others in a Crash Bash sequel or something. I don't know. I honestly still like Crash Bash, despite its brutal difficulty that makes me want to quit gaming for life sometimes. Guys, thank you so much for watching yet another Crash Bandicoot related video here on the channel. I really enjoy making these and talking about beloved childhood characters and games and everything in between. And now, of course, there are many opinions you can disagree with in this video, and I absolutely welcome that. So if you have anything at all to say, please drop it down in the comment section below. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.